Play to win your share of $1 million every week this football season at DraftKings.com. With 1 Week Fantasy at DraftKings, you can play when you want with a team you want. Just pick your contest, pick your team, and pick up your winnings. Hurry to DraftKings.com now. Use code FINE and play for free with your first deposit in Sunday's $1 million fantasy contest. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Enter FINE for free entry now only at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
The Pirates and Cardinals have the best 2 records in baseball, and they go head-to-head one final time this regular season. Could this be a preview of next week's division series? Coverage begins Wednesday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio. This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We begin with one of our favorite people on the show. You get to meet a lot of people as you navigate around the Southeastern Conference, but one of the most special players in this league or in the entire world of college football is Dak Prescott, and we welcome him to our program from Starkville. Dak, I hope the day is going well. Congratulations on the start, and I sense you're feeling pretty good right now.
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on.
Well, let's go back. I know coaches always like to move forward, and I understand that. And with A&M Saturday night, I know that's where your focus is. But how sweet was it to get that win at Jordan-Hare Stadium Saturday night?
It felt good. It was good for the whole team. It was a great team win. Defense stepped up when they need to. Offense made plays to score enough points to get that win. But anytime you can go on the road in a hostile environment like Auburn and get a win, it's big, and it was huge for this team.
A field goal away from being 4-0. Certainly last year at this time, A&M was slowly emerging as one of those teams in the country that everyone was talking about, ultimately becoming the number 1 team in the country. How does this feel, or does it feel any different than a year ago when you were a Heisman favorite, maybe still to be down the road, and Mississippi State was number 1 in the country?
Yeah, I really don't think it's much different. 2 teams that things are going their way so far this season. We dropped the 1 loss to LSU, but this is a very important game for us. Another road SEC game, and we want to get going in the SEC and pick that ranking up and that get going 2-1 in the conference. So this will be a big win if we can get it going down to A&M.
I know you dealt with all the Heisman hype last year. Your compatriot at LSU, Leonard Fournette, is getting it all this year. Certainly you saw Leonard in LSU a couple of weeks ago. Do you pay much attention to all that stuff, or do you have too much to do to get ready for the next game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't pay too much of the Heisman hype, but of course I turn on ESPN. I'm seeing the stats and seeing what players are doing. So advice to Leonard, keep it up, and that trophy might be yours.
I mean, I know you know all these guys, but and maybe it's not fair to ask one player about another, but you all get compared from time to time. But his numbers are mind-boggling, and the comparisons with some of the great players in college football history are being made. Where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean, he's doing a great job. I mean, over 200 yards these last 2 games. So I mean, that's phenomenal, and not too many people can compete with that. So like I said, all credit to him.
Let's talk about the opponent Saturday night, Kyle Field. I'm sure you know they've added a few seats. They spruced the place up. It's one of the great facilities in the country. Not that Mississippi State doesn't have one as well, but your thoughts on heading to Texas for a primetime encounter?
It's going to be a hostile environment. We know they call it the 12th man. The 12th man, I know all their fans are going to be into it. They're going to try to make it as loud as they can and hostile for us, especially on third down and big plays. So we've just got to go in, make sure we communicate well, and just be the team we are. We've all played in big-time road games, and last week was preparing us for this one. So just keep moving forward and communicating. We'll be fine on offense.
Jack, it's interesting. You've seen it all, and you've done it all in your incredible career. And I realize you're still young, and it's not a time perhaps to get nostalgic. But have you given any thought to? I mean, this is it for you now. You came back for the final year. You're every week. It's the final time here at Kyle Field or somewhere else. Or am I just imagining things because I'm significantly older than you?
Well, I mean, I just think of it as my last trip. Like you said, the last time I'll play in some of these SEC stadiums and play these SEC teams. So just to make the most of every opportunity, every play I'm given, and be ready for every situation and make sure I give my team the best opportunity to win the game and put ourselves in the right position. So, yeah, I mean, I really that's my last chance, my last go-around, and that's the reason I came back.
You have so many school records, I believe 21 in all, and you're being described, I think, Saturday night on the broadcast as the greatest player in Mississippi State history. I know you seem like a humble guy. You seem grounded, but that's a mouthful when you start to hear people talk about you in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling, though. It's everything I wanted when I came to school at Mississippi State and signed up to be the quarterback under Coach Mullen. And all the stats and records, that's something I'll look back to later in life and be proud of. But right now, I'm just living for the day. I'm living for the moment. I'm ready to go out today and get better at practice. And like I said, just give my team the best opportunity to win and be the best leader I can today.
When you think about what Mississippi State is doing this year versus the past, how would you – I know I asked you this in terms of the overall status, but how would you compare the offense this year versus last year? Certainly a couple of components are gone, but you seem to be making up for that pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got playmakers, and what we're going to do, whatever we can to get in their hands. We've got some older receivers now, and I think that's the core position of this team right now. So we're going to get them the ball as much as we can, no matter how it is. And I think our running backs will come along. The run game has been a little shy for us early in the season, but we've got to get it going. We want to be a balanced offense, and everything will work out. As long as we're scoring more points than the other team, we're fine. So as long as we can keep going.
Dak, it was a year ago this weekend that the state of Mississippi was the epicenter of college football. The Bulldogs beat Texas A&M, in case you have forgotten. And meanwhile, up in Oxford, Ole Miss was beating Alabama. Ole Miss has already taken care of Alabama. This week, the Rebels go to Florida. I mean, do you keep up with those guys? Those guys playing for the school up the road in the northern part of the state, or do you leave that to others?
I'll leave that to others. I mean, obviously, we're gonna hear they're undefeated. We're gonna hear how well they're doing, but I don't really pay much attention to them until the last week of the season and our time to play them.
Let me make you into a football analyst, which I'm sure you'll be one day. You're having a really big year. We all said you were the best quarterback in the SEC coming back, but what are your thoughts on the duo at Texas A&M? Certainly Kyle Allen, the starter, and Kyler Murray. I mean, these are two fine quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a great job, and I think more importantly than anything, in a situation like that, as I was in early in my career, they're feeding off of each other. I mean, of course they're competing, both of them want to play, but it seems like they're feeding off each other, and when one does good, the other one comes in and wants to do good as well. So, I mean, that's a great duo right now, and our defense is going to have their hands full, but I think they're going to be ready for it.
I wanted to ask you, because we spend so much time on this program talking about quarterbacks, and I won't get too deep into the weeds here, but you were at Auburn last weekend. You had Jeremy Johnson coming in. Everyone talked about him. For whatever reason, it just doesn't work out. Not to get overly specific, because I know you're concentrating on your own team, but when quarterbacks aren't able to perform, they don't live up to expectations. What do you think it is, as someone who has not only played that position for a long time but excelled at that position?
Confidence more than anything. Jeremy Johnson, I mean, he didn't have a great start to his season, but he's a great player. I mean, you can tell he's athletic. He does things right, but I think it's more so confidence than anything of just going back to the things that got you to Auburn, that got you in the position that you were in before things started going bad, and just try to be true to yourself and get that confidence back up and make sure your teammates are rallying around you and show your teammates you have their back.
Dak, we had you on the set at SEC Media Days with Josh Dobbs, and certainly his team has struggled a little bit. Do you stay in touch with players, friends that you meet along the way at quarterback camps or at other events during the season? Do you guys text or talk?
A little bit every now and then. We'll text each other good luck or who y'all got this week, or see somebody have a great performance, just text them congratulations, things like that. As
I mentioned a moment ago, the Rebels from up north, I know you can't think about the Egg Bowl at the end of the season unless you want to think about what happened last year, but I would imagine that was just one of those motivating events that you'll file away for late November. Would that be a fair statement?
It's as fair as it gets. That was one of the main reasons coming back. Didn't want to leave that egg up there, so I definitely want to get that Egg Bowl back here where it belongs in Mississippi State, and I'll be ready for that last game of the season.
Dak, I know you're a busy guy. You have your master's degree. You're getting ready for Kyle Field. You don't pay attention to or I hope you don't pay attention to programs like this, but we have a guy that is a big Mississippi State fan, a guy named Stingray, and any chance you've ever heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard of Stingray. I've seen one of his videos before.
He's a big Rebel fan. He's a big fan of the Bulldogs, and,
exactly.
and I'm still hearing the cowbells in my ear from his last rant. But unlike you, I have not gotten used to that sound.
Yeah, I mean, he's a passionate fan, and yeah, I love the sound of cowbells, and hopefully he's getting the rest of the country or whoever's listening to the rant used to those cowbells.
Dad, good luck this weekend at Kyle Field, and always appreciate your time. Best wishes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Football's back, and it already feels like the playoffs thanks to 1 Week Fantasy at DraftKings.com. With millions of dollars in prizes being paid out each week, every play in every game could take you closer to a life-changing payday. Hurry to DraftKings.com now. Use promo code FINE and play for free with your first deposit in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy contest. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Enter FINE for free entry now only at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's move along. And a lot of people writing Alabama off. Our last caller, Uncle Lou, just said 14 to 17 point victory by Georgia over Alabama. What do you say, Jerome?
I think he lost his left, right, and middle mind, Finebaum. You hear me? Georgia is just like anybody else, Finebaum. Georgia's just like Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I got to just scratch Ole Miss right now. They just like Arkansas. They just like Oklahoma. They just like Auburn. You know what? And the media, Finebaum, who gonna write us off? Huh? Who gonna write us off, Finebaum? The same ones that told us Arizona State, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Auburn, all these teams are gonna win a national championship. Finebaum, if they gonna be the ones that write us out, gee whiz, we're gonna be all right, Paul. We're gonna be fine. And then you know what? They want to talk about the SEC down. SEC been down, Finebaum, the last 4 or 5 years. We've been down, but guess what? Since the Tide is having a little bit of problem now, y'all can really see the kinks in the umber. Now the SEC really down. But you know what? We done carried y'all clown for the last 5 or 6 years. We done won championships, struggled, toted you to the doggone trophy, everything in the blue moon, and we can't get nobody else to help us. But that's all right. We're going to start a new dynasty then, since y'all want to tell us this one over with. We're going to start a new one on Saturday afternoon at 2:30. Tub Rock won't rock Saturday, Finebaum. That show has been canceled to next weekend. Roll Tide and have a good damn day.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We have not heard from many Auburn fans since the epic collapse. No Tammy this week. No Charles from Reeltown. No I-Man. Well, correction. I-Man is next. Good afternoon.
No I-Man. Live from the capital city. Always live from the capital city. Win, lose, or draw. You know, Paul, I hear a lot of Auburn fans say, it's just not fun to watch Auburn football. I hear your analysts say, they're not fun. I had them going to the national championship. Boy, was I wrong, but let me jump off that ship now. I love it when your analysts are wrong because, they break down film and they study so hard, and, they are the consummate professionals, although they look like the constipated unprofessionals. But, Paul, I found it interesting that the Wall Street Journal would write an article about the length of a football game. If you go to producing these games to fit your time schedule, aren't you taking the reality out of it and the natural and the norm, and now you're producing it to fit your time frame when your time frame is built on selling commercials? Would you agree?
Well, the issue that I think a lot of networks have, and only one is in the position of ESPN, that most of the games are slotted for about a 3.5 hour period, and when they go long, you have to find some place to put them. ESPN has multiple networks. They can put a game on ESPN News, ESPNU, ESPN2, the SEC Network, wherever until the next one starts. But if the other ones don't have that luxury.
Where is ESPN and the big boy network of all these big guys? Maybe their professionals are underestimating as well. So there's a lot of, where'd they get all these geeks coming in here, changing everything and trying to assume this is how long it should last because we got to watch The Voice. We got to watch The Voice. That boy from Slapout's on. Oh, my God, where's that boy from Slapout? I'm mad as hell and I ain't taking it no more. But I find that interesting. And then, Paul, can I be real honest with you? Because I love this show better than anybody. And I understand y'all going, to the situations that you go to, the campuses on Friday. You're interviewing everybody. You get some calls in. But you know what I miss most? I miss most Monday when the callers call in and are whining and moaning and groaning and celebrating, and the callers don't get to speak as much, because you did not write a book about ESPN analysts. You wrote a book about callers, and you sold this show on callers. And I love all your analysts, but I think that whoever's producing this thing is overproducing this. We are not Phil Collins. We are Rod Stewart in the faces, and we are raw, and that's what the country loved, was raw emotion. And now it seems so staged, and it's like having a bad bass player and a drummer. They just aren't connecting. I want my bass player back, Paul. I've been your drummer for 15 years, and I'm mad as hell, and I want the other bass player back now. War Eagle.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
He is one of our favorite people and favorite guests on this program. Is Chris Fallica from College GameDay. Got a great opportunity to be around him all the time a couple of years ago, and hard to find. It's impossible to find a more knowledgeable person on the sport. Chris Fallica joins us, and Chris, thanks for the time as always. And you don't need to hype Alabama, Georgia, but I saw one of your notes, and you asked a question earlier this week: is this the biggest game for Nick Saban at Alabama? He's won 4 national championships. He's been in contention every year, but it is important because if Alabama loses, it could mark the beginning of the end. Fair statement?
Yeah, I think it's a fair statement, but also keep in mind that if you look at the Alabama roster, I think the one thing that people agree on is missing is a quarterback. And they have 2 very young, highly touted guys that maybe by next year or certainly the year after, they'll be ready to play. And I think marking the end of a dynasty, I think it might be a little premature to say that, given that if you think only one thing is lacking and you've got a couple of young guys on the roster that you think is going to develop, I think it's a little too early to throw dirt on the Alabama tombstone. You
are money when it comes to predictions. I believe I saw something. You've been 20-5 this year on calls. So when you look at the Alabama-Georgia game, what do you look for? I mean, we know the quarterback situation, but if you're trying to handicap that game, where do you go?
I think there are a couple things that I'm looking at. Is just Alabama. The turnover margins, obviously, -13 in the last 6 losses. But I'm also hesitant on just anointing Grayson Lambert in Georgia just because they ripped apart an awful South Carolina defense. I mean, they went on the road to struggle against Vandy, and the Vandy defense turned out to be okay. They gave Ole Miss a game there for a while, but the game just kind of feels like it has one of those been there, done that kind of games. In the last 7 times, Georgia has taken on a top 15 Power 5/AQ opponent when they were the higher-ranked team. They've lost 6 of them. And then the last 9 times Alabama entered the game as a lower-ranked team, it won 7 of them. So, I mean, I think it's a perfect spot. I know Alabama would love to be undefeated and be number 1 and number 2 in the country, but I think it's a really good spot for Nick Saban and Alabama to potentially go in there as an underdog. Really, I mean, people have just written them off already. That the dynasty's over, the season's over, the run's over. It's really if you can't be undefeated, you couldn't ask for a better spot as an Alabama fan to be going in there with 30 little pressure. I'm with you. I think the pressure is all on Georgia this year.
And I've made this argument all week, Chris, and as I say it, I'm finding myself going, what am I saying? Because it almost seems contradictory. But let me ask you to explain it a little bit more. Let's forget what happened at Bryant-Denny Stadium 2 weeks ago. What if Alabama had pulled that game out, just for the sake of argument? What do you think, or how do you think the dynamics of this game would have been different?
I think Alabama would be a favorite in the game, and I think it would be a chance for Georgia to knock off an undefeated team as a lower-ranked team, as a home underdog, and announce their arrival as the team to beat in the SEC. So I think the result of Bryant-Denny a couple of weeks ago completely flipped the perception and the outcome of the game.
Ole Miss at Florida. You'll see Tim Tebow's speech a couple of times this weekend, I'm sure. It was an amazing game during Urban Meyer's championship season. What intrigues you the most as the Rebels head to the Swamp Saturday night?
It was interesting to see Florida crack the top 25 this week, and really their only reason they're ranked is because of Tennessee's mismanagement in the final 10 minutes of that game. But I think this game has one of the biggest potential mismatches of the weekend in terms of the Ole Miss defensive line versus the Florida offensive line. I mean, you look at the teams that Florida has played thus far, the defenses they played. New Mexico State's 127 in defense. East Carolina's 106. Kentucky's 83rd. Tennessee's 44th. But despite all those terrible defenses they played, Florida's not even a top 50 offense in terms of efficiency. I think the Ole Miss defensive line is going to dominate the game. The Rebels got the wake-up call last week when they screwed around with Vandy for a little while. 2 non-conference games the next couple of weeks for Ole Miss before they get back into SEC play. The Gators are going to have the Rebels' full attention. They got the wake-up call last week, and I think Ole Miss goes on the road to get the big win.
Ohio State at Indiana. I know the boys in Bloomington tried to get game day there. I don't think they had much of a shot, but they definitely blew up Lee Fitting's Twitter feed, which isn't a bad idea, by the way, to do that.
We all encourage that. Anything negative, and anything you want to say to Mr. Fitting, have at it. At least Fitting, he's there.
No, I agree with you. I send him hate mail every week. But Ohio State has just become the Florida State of last year. They're difficult to watch. They're not playing well. This was the team anointed 5 weeks ago as almost an automatic. What's going on?
Well, I think Urban Meyer even addressed that last week, saying he thinks that everyone's kind of feeling the pressure and living up to the hype and the expectations, and with that bullseye on their back right now. But I think this is probably as close to a wake-up or a bullseye type game where Ohio State will play well. Yes, Indiana's 4-0, but yeah, they're like 56 of 65 Power 5 teams in terms of the FPI power rating. They're really not a very good team. It's a team that has really struggled against FIU and Wake Forest, giving up a ton of points. I think this is a really good chance for Ohio State to go on the road, get away from home, focus. We saw them in the road game against Virginia Tech opening night of the year, where they played their best football. And I think I'd be very surprised if this were anything more than a 3 or 4 touchdown win for Ohio State.
We had Dak Prescott on earlier. Certainly this is a better game than I think most of us thought it would be, but something tells me you're not buying heavily into this one. Mississippi State at Texas A&M.
No, I'm totally with you. This is a really intriguing game to me because while I don't think the Mississippi State offense is going to generate a ton of points, their defense is very good. Oh, by the way, I'd like to give my triple not so fast Mississippi State over Auburn pop. One little run again last week. Guys on the flip side pick those upsets every now and then. But this is a really dangerous spot for Texas A&M. Off the final game before the Alabama game. This is the game last year against Mississippi State where the wheels really came off for the Aggies after that great start. Escaped. That was a great game against Arkansas the other night. It never really felt like A&M was in control or had a chance to win the game, but finally getting the ball back late after Arkansas played a great game to keep away the entire night. The Aggies made some plays. I like A&M to win the game, but I think this is going to be another really tough, close game because the Mississippi State defense, I think, will give A&M some problems.
I saw your tweet as Butch Jones went for 1 against Florida, and I'm going. I wonder if Chris Fallica is going to turn out to be a prophet on this, like he would be later in the evening. And guess what? Hello, Mr. Prophet. What's?
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I know it's easy to second guess, but a lot of people saw it. If you go for 2 and you miss, you're up 26-14, and you're in the same 26-14, 27-14. They're the same thing at that point in the game. If you lose 28-26, at least you can say, you know what, we figured we needed to go for 2 in case, and we didn't get it. But 28-27 was really avoidable, and I feel really bad for the Tennessee players and Tennessee fans because they're opponents now, 9-10 on 4th down this year. Oklahoma scored a touchdown on 4th down. Florida scored a touchdown on 4th down, given the loss there. I mean, they're really, really close to being a top 12 team and undefeated right now. I wouldn't write the Vols off for the rest of the year because they have a ton of talent, and that's another game this week between the 2 ways that Tennessee lost last week, the way Arkansas lost last week. That's going to be a really intriguing game to see which team can bounce back off of that loss quicker.
Let me go back to something we talked about a minute ago, and that's Auburn. I realize they're off the radar grid this week, but we talked a lot about Oregon falling from grace, and I want to get your thoughts on that. But Auburn and Oregon, to me, they played for the championship a couple of years ago, and Auburn won in 2010. Then Auburn played and lost, and Oregon played and lost. What's going on with these 2 programs?
Well, Oregon really concerned me entering this year because I think there were questions, and a lot of people even raised them last year. Like, okay, Marcus Mariota is going to be gone after this year. What is the long-term prognosis for the Oregon program? Because I think people thought, okay, Chip is gone. Marcus is still there for a couple of years. He's good enough to cover up a lot of the concerns that they have. And now you have no Chip, you have no Marcus. And if you look back defensively, especially, when they played for the national title against Auburn in 2010, they were second in the country in defensive efficiency. Nick Aliotti's final year, they were, I think, 15th or 16th in defense. Last year, without Aliotti for the first time, they fell into the low 30s, I think 36th or something like that. And entering last week, they were 82nd, which now they're outside the top 100. So there were a lot of worries about that Oregon defense, especially on my part, entering the year. And I never in a million years thought that Utah would have been the offense to completely expose them, but they were. And it certainly looks like the Ducks have a few more losses on their slate upcoming for the rest of the year. And Auburn, what is it with the second year after playing for a national title for the Tigers? I mean, after 2010, 2012 was one of the worst years in SEC history, and now 2 years after 2013, it looks like they're headed for another rough. I saw the guys talk about schedule yesterday about how many SEC games they're going to win, and will they finish 6-6? I don't know if 6-6 is possible. I just don't see who they're going to beat late in the year in the SEC.
Chris Fallica, College Game Day, live in Clemson for the Notre Dame matchup. Clemson, a site you guys have been to a few times in the past. Well, we appreciate it, Chris. Talk next week. Can't wait to do it.
Anytime, Paul. Take care.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The Golden State Warriors, NBA champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's get back to the calls, and Daryl is next up in Georgia. Hey, Daryl.
Well, I think that is pretty much officially just throwing in the towel right there. I mean, wouldn't you say? Okay, Gus, we understand that. Okay, but what you tend to forget is you are a spread offense. That is what you've implemented there. He is a pocket passer. I mean, I don't get it. Let me ask you something. Wouldn't you say that somewhere along the lines, Jay Jacobs has to be equally responsible? Wasn't he the one that did Gate on Tommy Tuberville?
Well, he was not. David Housel was the athletic director.
Okay, a different one. Okay, it's just, I mean, but okay, they had consistency with Tuberville. I will give Auburn that. At least they had consistency. Ever since then, Chiswick, no consistency.
Well, but hold on a second, Daryl. I mean, here's where it gets interesting with Auburn. I mean, Chiswick and Malzahn have been all over the map. They both have played for national championships. But I'm wondering, though, if that hasn't been the outlier. I mean, Chiswick clearly lost control of the program. He lost his job. The real question is, what is Gus Malzahn going to do to get this back? Because until 2 or 3 weeks ago, he had as good a reputation as anyone in the country. And even though last season collapsed and Auburn went 8-5, it was like no one cared. I mean, you listen to this show, Daryl. Every Auburn fan was so confident that Auburn was back regardless of the way the season ended. Auburn has now lost 5 consecutive SEC games.
They're the first team, it has to be the first team in college football history to be ranked in the top 5 and lose their first game and fall out of the rankings. I mean, unbelievable. I still can't believe it. And you're right. I mean, to put all this is, but here's the deal: you've got to stick with that quarterback, man. I mean, you've got to. I just don't, unless he's hurt. If he's injured or something like that, then I can understand it. But if that's not the case, I don't get it. Especially with all the hype. I mean, maybe you've got some kinks you got to work out, but just to bench him and go with a redshirt freshman. I mean, I would be questioning that big time. That don't even make sense to me. I mean, we're paying you millions of dollars, and that's the best decisions that you can make. I mean, it's ridiculous. Paul, okay, I'm going to break down the Georgia-Alabama game. Well, first let me say this, okay? I want to send props out to my man, Ben Flanagan. I appreciate him throwing props there for me. I don't know what ESPN is waiting for. I mean, there's a great writer right there. They like quality people. There's one right there.
Did you say Ben Flanagan?
Yes.
Ben Flanagan, AL.com, he wrote a great piece yesterday breaking down this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was great. He needs to be working for ESPN. I don't know why they haven't offered him the job. You know what I'm saying? The guy, I love his articles, real good, especially when he writes about me, But, hey, I'm going to break down to Georgia. I heard Jerome coming in here, bumping his gun. I remember Jerome was also the one that said, if you remember, when Ole Miss beat Alabama last year, that was their national championship game. So what did Ole Miss do? Turn around and beat them again. Turn around, and I guess they won that national championship game this time, though, right? I mean, good Lord. But let's break it down, okay? Quarterback, Georgia has to have the edge. Running back, Georgia has to have the edge. Wide receivers, Georgia has to have the edge. Offensive line, Georgia has the edge. I'll call it even on the defensive line. I'm giving Georgia the advantage in the secondary, and I'm giving Georgia the advantage in special teams. And what I don't understand is all them number one recruiting classes. How is that? I mean, how has it turned out to be that way? But, what's Alabama? They won last week, Paul, and they dropped in the poll. The dynasty is over. It was never a dynasty anyway. Paul, when you win a championship and the next year you don't win, and then you win a championship, and you win a championship, and the next 2 years you don't win a championship, that's not a dynasty. A dynasty doesn't have hiccups in it. A dynasty is consecutive winning, like UCLA did in the 70s in basketball. So, I mean, and yeah, there's a little bad blood in this. Remember the shot down to the liver? We haven't forgotten about that. This might have been 3 years ago. This might be a different football team, but we still haven't forgotten about that. Come Saturday, between the hedges, I cannot wait. We're going to lay the smack down on that Alabama Crimson Tide, Rudy Poo. See you, Paul.
Thank you very much. Daryl, obviously, okay, we've been waiting for this call, and I thought about this Saturday night when Florida went and put the final nail in the coffin. Lance is next. Good afternoon, Lance.
Oh, Paul, I don't want to hear the crying about how Tennessee lost the game. I don't want to hear all this bull crap about Butch Jones. I've been telling you all summer long about Butch Jones. He's a choke artist. He ain't stacking nothing but bricks in the loss column. And you keep talking, all you want to do is act like his focus isn't costing the game. You want to ignore that fumble that your boy Josh Doss, the superstore, gave up. That's what put us back in the game, Paul. But nobody wants to talk about that because everybody wants to hate on Butch Jones. Well, I already knew about Butch Jones. Tell me something I don't know, Paul. Genius. And you want to talk about that top 5 recruiting class? How about that little freshman Antonio Callaway? I think he had a bigger impact on the game than any player in them top 5 recruiting classes Butch Jones put together. And you know why I got them, huh? Volunteers. But hey, Paul, tell me this. I told you, Butch Jones wasn't a special coach. You laughed at me and told me he was. Now, come on. When you going to give me some love on the show?
Listen, I don't know what else to do. Lance, I don't know what else to do, but I introduced you. I give you credit. What do you want me to do? Jump up and down? Stand on my head?
I want you to talk about Will Greer and Florida in a respectable manner, Paul, because all I said about Florida is they could win 5 conference games, and you said, what makes you think they're going to be so great?
Let me say that. I am incredibly impressed with what I've seen so far from Florida. I didn't expect them. I thought that they'd have one loss. I thought that loss would be Tennessee. I did think they'd get by Kentucky. I think they have a difficult road ahead. I don't see them winning the next couple of weeks, but I've been wrong before.
I think they can beat Missouri.
Like every week on this show.
I think they can beat Missouri. And who knows about this week? I like the way Coach Mack is going to this week. He's already talking about how Ole Miss don't got no regard for Florida. And like you said, we should go in here and get our butts kicked. So let's go in here and have some fun. I think it'll take a little pressure off Will Greer, who's obviously felt a little pressure these last 2 weeks. He's missed a lot of easy throws. But once his feet get settled in, he won't have to make fourth-quarter comebacks. Mm-hmm. And I try to tell you all along, and all y'all want to talk about was Jeremy Johnson. I told you, he did a first half against Arkansas, one of the worst defenses ever, and y'all want to praise him up, but I can't get no optimism for Will Greer. And you want to talk about Brett Bielema. I told you that punk was in over his head, and he won't never win in the SEC. You told me I was crazy. Wait and see. We ain't got to wait and see, Paul. Some things I just know. Pay attention, son. Go Gators!
Appreciate the call. Always a pleasure.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Peter is next up in Jacksonville. Hey, Peter.
Hey, what's going on? This is Peter Paul, the Gator Man.
You got it.
And I want to let you know, and this is not toward you, but Paul, listen, brother, I have forgotten more football than most guys know. Next week, This Saturday, 7 o'clock in Gainesville. You know what? I want every woman, man, boy, and child to sit down. We're going to shock the crowd again. Everybody in Oxford, Mississippi will be sucking on lemons that night. I tell you, brother, the state of Florida, Alabama, you should thank us. I sent you Amari Cooper. I sent you Derrick Henry. LSU, I sent you a good cornerback in Tolliver. And I tell you, I want to help Charlie Strong. If you want to win Charlie Strong, you got to recruit in Florida. They make these movies, Texas Friday Night Lights. The best football players in the high school, ladies and gentlemen, are in the Sunshine State, from Escambia to Key West. We can make our own movie, Football Icons. And I tell you all what, you don't think, every game, Florida is beginning to buy into the winning. That game against Tennessee, there wasn't a tip ball. It wasn't a bad officiating call like the Ohio State-Miami game. We took what we wanted from them like the men of Sparta. I'm going to tell you something, Paul Finebaum. If I tell you mosquito to tobacco, you look for snuff between his teeth. In the state of Florida, we are the strongest Thursday SEC. And we're the state of the union in Florida high school football. And as the nature boy would say, to be the best, you got to beat the best. Go Gators. Woo!
Wow. What an original call. I mean, you just have one of the big wins, the comeback story from Jim McElwain, and that's the best you can do.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app.
Last week, Julie Carroll posted a status that read, "Just had the most delicious banana ever." It got 2 likes and 4 comments. Well, Julie, Geico also wants to make a comment. What if we told you in as little as 15 minutes you could save hundreds of dollars on your car insurance by switching to Geico? With those hundreds of dollars, we bet you can find another banana equally, if not more delicious than the one you had last week. Hashtag go bananas, hashtag savings.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The Pirates and Cardinals have the best 2 records in baseball, and they go head-to-head one final time this regular season. Could this be a preview of next week's division series? Coverage begins Wednesday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio.